Okay, good morning. We are going to be starting our lesson on probability today. So this is chapter 5 in the textbook, and probability is all about chance. That's why I have this picture here from you might recognize from Monopoly. So when we talk about probability, we are talking about what is the chance that something will happen. That's what we're talking about here. So if you take a look here at you will be able to, after this lesson, you will be able to find the probability of an event in several different ways. That's kind of just fancy language for being able to solve a probability question, knowing what the chances are of something happening, and give answers as probabilities from 0 to 100%. Couple of keywords here for the lesson that are important. Probability. That means the likelihood or, again, chance of an event occurring. And if you take a look here, there is a little model to help us figure out what probability is. So it says probability is the favorable outcome over possible outcomes. So when we talk about possible outcomes, we're talking about how many options are there? And if you notice, this is kind of set up like a fraction, and you will notice that we are going to be treating it like a fraction. So we know that in a fraction, the total always goes on the bottom. If there's a pizza cut into 8 pieces and you have 3 pieces, the 8 on the bottom represents the total number, and that's exactly what possible outcomes means. So we'll see a little bit more of this in a little bit here. So continuing on, this is what's going to be new for us. So probability can be expressed as a fraction and a percent as well as a ratio. The ratio is going to be new for us. We haven't looked at those yet, but ratios are really, really nice and simple. So that's good news. Outcome. The word outcome means one possible result of probability experiment. And a favorable outcome is a successful result in a probability experiment. So these terms will make a little bit more sense as we go through the lesson, but feel free to look back at them at any point if you are confused. So here we go. Here's the type of question that we're going to be looking at when we're doing this type of lesson. So here's a question. A spinner is divided into 5 equal sections. The spinner is spun once. If you look carefully, it's not super clear, but I'll try and highlight it here with a blue. There's a little paper clip right here. So that little paper clip is what is being spun on this spinner. And they tell us that the spinner is being spun once. Find the following probabilities. Write each answer as a fraction, a ratio, sorry, that's a type O, it should be ratio, and a percent. So if you take a look, here are the questions that they're asking us. What is the probability of spinning an A? What is the probability of spinning a vowel? And what is the probability of spinning a Q? So those are the 3 questions that we're going to work through together to answer. So before we dive right into the question, I want to draw your attention to something here. It says the probability of an impossible event is 0 or 0%. The probability of a certain event is 1 or 100%. So what do we mean when we say impossible event or a certain event? So impossible means just what it says. It's impossible. For example, if I said to you, what are the chances that you can roll a 0 when you roll a die? Well, we know that a die doesn't have a 0 on it, so the chances are impossible. It's not possible to roll a 0. On the other side, what if I said to you, what are the chances that you can roll a number? So when you roll that die, what are the chances that you're going to get a number? Well, that's a certain event. There's no letters on the dice, just numbers. So we know that that's definitely going to happen. If you take a look here right in the center, we can see that there's a coin. It's an even chance, 50-50 chance that I could get a heads or tails. So these are just some different ways to describe probability that will come into effect a little bit later. One more diagram here before we dive into the question. Some different ways to explain what we're seeing. In the first bag right here, you can see that there's only red marbles. So it's a certain event. There's 100% chance that I'm going to pull a red marble because there's only red marbles inside. Next one, if you take a look at this one, there is 1 blue marble and 5 red marbles. So it's likely that I'm going to choose red because there's more red than blue. Next, in this one, both red and blue have the same number of marbles. So the word they used to describe it was equally likely because there's an equal number. Next, it's unlikely I'm going to choose red here. Why? Because there's only 1 red marble and there's 5 blue marbles. Finally, the last one, it's impossible that I'm going to choose red because there's no red in here. So in that case, we would say that there's a 0% chance of getting a red because there is no red. So I just wanted to show you those couple diagrams before we get started, just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about when I say a certain event or an impossible event. So now we're going to go into those questions. So the first question says, what is the probability of spinning an A? So if we take a look at this spinner right here, we can see that there's 1 A. I'm going to try and highlight that there for you. So the first step, guys, is to determine the total number of outcomes. Remember, whenever we're doing a fraction, we need to know the total. That's the possible outcomes in this diagram right here. So we look at the spinner, there are 5 letters. Step 2, determine the number of favorable outcomes. So favorable outcomes, that's what the question's asking us. We want to know what the probability of spinning an A is. If we get an A, that's a favorable outcome. So if you take a look here, there's only 1 A. That means there's 1 favorable outcome. So in this case, if we were to write that down, our possible outcomes goes on the bottom. There's 5 letters, and favorable goes on top. So it'd be 1/5. That would be the fraction. Now, if you remember, we are looking for a couple other ways to represent this. We're going to represent it as a fraction, a percent, and a ratio. So we'll do that on the next page. So the next thing that I want to draw your attention to is instead of every single time writing the probability of A occurring, there's a way that we abbreviate this. We put a P with our favorable outcome inside. So let's say instead of probability of pulling an A, we were looking for E. We'd just do probability of E, or probability of S, probability of T. In this case, we're looking for A, so that's how we're going to abbreviate it. P bracket A close bracket equals. So we already figured out the fraction together, and that was 1/5. The next step is you're going to punch this into your calculator. You might already know what 1/5 is as a percent, but if you don't, you can punch into your calculator numerator divided by the denominator, and that's going to give you 0.2. To turn that into a percent, you can use Dr. Pepper, which means you're going to move the decimal 2 places and add a percent sign, or you just multiply by 100. So if you have 0.2 multiply by 100, that's going to give you 20%. Finally, for the ratio section, this one's new to us. We haven't done it before, but it's really nice and easy. If you can do the fraction, you can do the ratio. Basically, all you do is you write there's a 1 colon, which kind of stands for 1/5 chance of pulling an A. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next question. This one for you is a you try. See if you can figure out this question. Pause the video, give it a try. If you didn't print out the notes package for this, you can just write this down on a piece of paper. So pause the video now and give that a try. Okay, so hopefully you gave that a try. So this question is asking you, what is the probability of spinning a vowel? We're still looking at the same spinner, and in this case, we're going to look and see which of the letters are vowels. So there's an A, that's a vowel, and there's an E. So there's 2 vowels on the spinner. So the first step is to figure out the total number of outcomes. And the total number of outcomes is 5. It hasn't changed. There's still only 5 letters on the spinner. The favorable number of outcomes. Well, I know to get a vowel, I could get an A or an E. So that means this time there's 2 outcomes that are favorable, meaning 2 that would be what I'm looking for. So we're going to scroll down. Here, when we've abbreviated, notice we've put probability of A or E, because this case we're okay with either because it's a vowel. The fraction is going to be a 2 over 5. Once again, to figure out that percent, you're going to divide 2 divided by 5, and you're going to get 0.4. And then what you're going to do is you're going to multiply that by 100, and that's going to give you 40%. The ratio in this case is the same thing as what we did before. There's a 2, colon stands for out of 5 chance. So hopefully you got that question, guys. We're going to keep moving on to the next question. And feel free to look back at any point if you're having some trouble. Next question. What is the probability of spinning a Q? So, first step, what is the total number of outcomes? This hasn't changed. There's still only 5 letters on the spinner. Determine the number of favorable outcomes. Now, you might be saying to yourself, there's actually no Q on the spinner. So the favorable number of outcomes, meaning the chances I'm going to get a Q, is actually 0 because there's no Q on there. So if you remember from before, this is actually called an impossible event. So we're going to scroll down and fill everything in. What is the probability of me getting a Q? The fraction is 0 out of 5. The percent is 0% because there's no chance. And the ratio is 0 out of 5 chance. All right, those are all the questions from the first example that we looked at. Hopefully those went okay for you. Like I said, if you had anything that you're not sure, definitely go back and rewatch this part before moving on. Next, here's a you try for you. So now's a good time for you to pause the video and give this one a try. All right, so hopefully you paused the video and you gave this one a try, and I'm going to fill in the answers now and you can check how you did. The letters S, N, O, W are placed in a bag. Show each answer as a fraction, percent, and ratio. First question, what is the probability of drawing a W? Drawing just means pulling one out. So there's 1 W, so I know that there's a 1 out of 4 chance. If I remember from quarters, if I have 4 quarters in my pocket, that's $1. So 1 quarter is 25 cents, so that would be 25%. Next, to do the ratio, 1 out of 4 chance. Next, what is the probability of drawing a consonant? Drawing, again, just means pulling a consonant out of a bag. Well, the only consonants are S, N, and W. O isn't a consonant. So I know that I have a 3 out of 4 chance. Once again, if you need to get the percent, punch this into your calculator. 3 divided by 4 equals 0.25 times 100 equals 25%. Or think about 3 quarters in your pocket. Finally, as a ratio, 3 out of 4 chance. What is the probability of drawing a B? This is kind of like that Q question. There is no B in there. So that just means that there's a 0 out of 4 chance, 0%, it's impossible, and 0 out of 4 as a ratio. So that was the end of the first kind of section of the lesson. Like I said, if anything's not clear, go back. If you have questions, send me a message and I'm happy to help you out. Moving on. Determining positive probabilities. So a bag contains 10 marbles. Show the probability of the following events as a fraction, ratio, and percent. So we want to know selecting a red marble, selecting a red marble, selecting a red or blue or green marble, or not selecting a red marble. So let's take a look at these questions together. First one, selecting a red marble. First step, how many possible outcomes are there? How many marbles are in the bag? We counted them up. There's 10. Step 2, how many red marbles are there? So we count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 marbles in the bag. 6 red marbles. Now they want us to show it as a fraction, percent, and a ratio. So the probability of me getting a red marble is 6 out of 10. As a fraction, this is 60%. And as a ratio, it's 6 out of 10 chance. Next question. What is the probability of selecting a red, blue, or green marble? Well, let's take a look back at this bag for a second. What color are the marbles in here? Red, blue, and green. So this question is actually asking me, what is the chance of me getting red, blue, or green? Well, all of the marbles in there are red, blue, and green. There's no purple, there's no orange, nothing like that. So the possible outcome stays the same, 10 marbles. How many red, green, or blue marbles are there? There's 10, because all of the marbles that are favorable are the colors that are in there. So if I pull out a red marble, it's favorable. If I pull out a blue one, it's favorable. If I pull out green, it's favorable. I'm always going to get one of those colors. So in this case, as a fraction, it's 10 out of 10. The percent, you get 10 out of 10 questions right, that's 100%. And as a ratio, it's 10 out of 10 chance. Notice the language here. This is a certain event. I'm definitely going to get a favorable outcome no matter what. I have a 100% chance of getting red, blue, or green because those are the only colors in there. Okay, finally, the last question. This one's a little bit trickier, so you have to pay attention. What are the possibilities, chances of not selecting a red marble? Well, we just said the other colors in there were green or blue. So let's take a look at this diagram. I don't want a red marble. So what I'm actually saying are, what are the chances that I'm going to get blue or green and not red? So this one we kind of have to read between the lines. The question is saying, I don't want a red one. So that actually means, what are the chances that I'll get a blue or green? So that's what I've written here. The probability of not selecting a red, is the same as selecting blue or green. So I've written that here. Probability of not red is actually just the probability of getting blue or green. So step 1, how many possible outcomes are there? 10. The number of marbles in the bag hasn't changed. How many blue or green marbles are there? So if we know that there's 5, there's 6 red marbles, that means there's going to be 4 that are blue or green. Show this as a fraction, percent, and ratio. Total goes on the bottom, 4 goes on the top. This is 40%, and as a ratio, 4 out of 10 chance. Here's a you try for you. I encourage you to pause the video and give this one a try on paper, and then come back to the video so you can see if you got it right. All right, so letter tiles for the word mountain are placed in a bag. Show your answer as, that's a typo, as a fraction, percent, and ratio. What is the probability of drawing a letter N from the bag? So here I'm going to write probability of n. Take a look at the word mountain. There's actually 2 n's in there. So that means that I have a 2 out of, how many letters are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 out of 8 chance. As a percent, you can punch this into your calculator. 2 divided by 8. That's going to give you 0.25. So that's 25%, or 2 out of 8 chance. Next question. What is the probability of drawing a letter from the bag? A letter. So only letters are in the bag. There's no numbers, no monkeys, nothing else, just letters. So I'm going to write here probability, sorry, this is going to be a bit squished, of getting a letter equals. So there's only letters in the bag. So that means there's a 8 out of 8 chance. 100% chance that I'm going to pull a letter out because there's only letters in there, or 10 out of 10 chance. This type of outcome is called a certain event, because I'm definitely going to get a letter. All right, and that's it for today, guys. So hopefully this lesson went well for you and you didn't have too many questions. If you do, send me a message, email. We can set up a Zoom time if you need help. Your job now is to go on and do your textbook questions. Once you've done your textbook, then you can go on to the workbook assignment that's there. This time you don't actually have the papers from the workbook, but what I'm going to encourage you to do is before you put your answers in digitally, try them on paper and then put your answer in on the digital worksheet. Okay, awesome. Great job today, you guys. Good luck.